And another National Signing Day come and gone, but still so much to go. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football for our National Signing Day recap live show. And we've got a number of great guests lined up to break down their teams. And we will go through all the top teams in the nation and all the top players in the nation to see who has yet to make their decision. Of course, this coming off the earliest National Signing Day on record, basically, as it was moved up, of course, about 6-7 years ago to an early signing day. And then, of course, this season up another couple weeks to December 4th. And, of course, coming in with another strong class, as always expected, the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart, because he has reiterated a number of times, especially in the face of a Dan Mullen, who's made other statements when he was at Florida, that recruiting is nonstop 365 all the time. And the proof is in the pudding. We got Jed May stopping by from Georgia Rivals. Jed, appreciate you being here. How's it going?
Good, man. It's like you said, it's interesting having signing day in the midst of, for Georgia writers, we're covering the lead up to an SEC championship too. So a little bit different on our end, but it stays busy, which I guess is how recruiting should be.
There you go. And before we dive into the 2025 class, your thoughts about the matchup against Texas, and also with the different format, of course, in the past, as was blatantly obvious to Georgia fans last year. They needed to win the SEC championship game, even though most thought that was one of the four best teams in the country. So the stakes not quite as high. Your thoughts about getting the seeding preference in an SEC championship?
Yeah, well, I was saying earlier, for Georgia, obviously it looks like you're probably in either way, but for this team, as banged up as they are at a few spots, winning on Saturday and getting 3 weeks and some change off before playing game would be huge. It lets your running back room get healthier. Your defensive line has had some guys banged up. Offensive line is pretty banged up. So it would be huge to have, what would be 23 days or whatever it would be off. As far as seeding, I think you'd be fine even if you lose. I think all the projections have them in that 7-8 probably range, hosting a home game, and then going on to a bowl from there if you win. So as far as predictions, I was on another show today, and I was like, this team is usually giving me what I expect the least, and what I expect least is a Georgia blowout win. So Georgia will probably win by about 20 on Saturday. But I think it's whoever can avoid turning the ball over. The first game between these two teams, Georgia turned it over 3 times, Texas turned it over 4 times, which I hadn't. When you say like there's 7 combined turnovers, it sounds pretty ridiculous. So whichever team can avoid that is going to be in good shape. I mean, Georgia was moving the ball at points, especially early in that game against Texas the first time around, and turned it over. So Georgia capitalized off Texas mistakes. Texas didn't capitalize off of Georgia mistakes. So it's going to be interesting to see. One, I'm guessing there probably won't be 7 turnovers again, but how many turnovers are there, and which team can capitalize on them come Saturday afternoon?
It's a common adage in sports, but especially in football, that the team that lost the first matchup in a rematch has a bit of an advantage in adjustments, revenge, all those sorts of things. I got to say, if I get some time, I'm going to go through that again. I posted a video a couple years ago because I was quite curious in conference championship games. And that's really the only time we don't see too many bowl matchups that are rematches. It's happened a few times to really see if that adage is true. I really couldn't make anything out of that. It was pretty much a toss-up in regards to who won that second game. But again, Georgia and Texas showing up in Atlanta on Saturday. All right, Jed, let's line up this class, and we'll get the names up there in just a second. And again, everybody join Jed's work there at Rivals on UGAsports.com. In terms of, we know it's a loaded class. Any particular standouts to you as we run down the list, and maybe some guys that are under the radar that you really like?
Yeah, I think offensively, you look at this receiver class, because I think that's one thing that people have talked about with Georgia this year is, well, do they have that same elite group of receivers as a lot of teams have? And you look at this receiver class, you've got CJ Wiley, who is a top 70, 75 player, Talon Taylor, who's a fringe 5-star. This guy here, Landon Rolden, is a guy who is pretty local to to Georgia, probably plays 20 minutes away from Athens, can absolutely fly. Worked out in Athens this summer, ran a sub 4.4 in the 40, and popped on the radar then. Thomas Blackshear and Tyler Williams as well, too. Very well-rounded guys with good size, 6'2". So a very well-rounded receiver class, and then paired with the 2 tight ends. Elias Williams, top tight end in the country, at 6'8", 230 pounds, which is just like Darnell Washington's height with Brock Bowers' weight is ridiculous. And then Ethan Barber is a very good player as well. And on the defensive side of the ball, you look at the defensive line, you've got 5-star Isaiah Gibson as kind of an edge rusher. You have 5-star Elijah Griffin, who I believe is the number 1 defensive tackle in the class for us, for Rivals. And, Georgia it's amazing in this age of NIL and, late bags and all this kind of stuff. Georgia was Elijah's first offer when he was in the 8th grade. And over 4 years later, he is now a signee in that class. So combine those 2 guys. Darren Nickenagbon from New Jersey is a guy Georgia's very high on. JJ Hanney grew up in Germany and camped this summer. Chase Linton's a delayed ad. So kind of 2, both position groups have got guys who both have been targets for a long time and have kind of burst on the radar late. And then obviously the big domino still remaining to fall tomorrow is 5-star defensive tackle Justice Terry, who we believe Georgia is in the lead for. So they had a few flip targets yesterday that didn't go their way. But I think if you close on Justice Terry tomorrow, like I expect they will, it's another phenomenal class in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball and at receiver and tight end on offense in particular.
Mark Richt, for years and years and years, brought in top 5 to 10 classes. Kirby Smart is obviously both on the field and reflected in the recruiting rankings, improved upon that. Can you draw any type of parallels in regards to what has been the difference in making outstanding recruiting classes like the coveted recruiting classes of the nation, being the standard bearer now in recruiting, now, especially now that Nick Saban's stepped aside?
Yeah, from what I understand, talking to folks who covered it back then, I think there's a much bigger emphasis on the trenches with Kirby Smart. He obviously was with Nick Saban for years, and we all know what those Alabama teams did on the offensive and defensive lines. And you look at that, that's kind of where Georgia builds out from. And to look at the defensive line in this class in particular, I think if you look at Georgia as a team right now, their defensive line is very solid, but I don't know that they have the game records that they've had in years past, like a Jalen Carter, like a Jordan Davis, like a Devontae Wyatt. And so in this class, you're trying to address that with Isaiah Gibson, with Elijah Griffin, with the potential addition of a Justice Terry. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's the same thing. I think you've got to get guys, they have gone for really massive humans. Juan Gaston. Juan Gaston is more fun to say, but I think it's pronounced Gaston. But I think Georgia listed him at 6'8" and 350 pounds, maybe. Dennis Uzochukwu, a late flip from Georgia State, is a guy that has a lot of upside. And then you go Mason Short, top 60 player. Dontrell Glover, top 250 player. Cortez Smith, top 250 player. So I think compared to the Richt years, again, I wasn't covering recruiting then, but from what I understand, there's been such a bigger emphasis on the lines of scrimmage that nothing else really matters as much if you just neglect the lines of scrimmage. And I think especially later in that Richt era, that's kind of what got him beat a little bit. So I think Kirby Smart put a big emphasis on that when he got to Georgia, and has definitely not let up on it over the past few years.
Jed May with Georgia Rivals. Please check out his work. Jed, we appreciate you stopping by for a first time here at the Voice of College Football. Would love to have you back sometime.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.
And we've got quite the lineup forming here with the SEC. So let's get right to it and keep it rolling here. We got Kevin McGuffey stopping by from Last Word on College Football to talk some Kentucky Wildcats. Not basketball, even though I know Kentucky Big Blue Nation is thinking hoops at this point, and they started to think hoops a lot sooner this fall, unfortunately, Kevin.
Yeah, since about mid-October, probably, hoops has probably been the dominant thing. But yeah, it's been just wasn't one. Everything started out well. the season kind of peaked with that win at Ole Miss, and just kind of, downhill slide ever since. It's kind of continued on even over the last couple of days. So, yeah.
All right. Well, hope springs eternal, and hope is mostly found in this recruiting class, although the transfer portal is going to be a big factor for everyone. So in terms of Kentucky's class coming in mostly on Wednesday, what are your thoughts?
I think overall it's a pretty good class. They had a couple of players who flipped earlier in the week, most notably Marquise Davis, who was a running back from Ohio. He was, depending on what circle, which thing you look at, he was the highest rated running back recruit Kentucky ever had. He flipped, went to Missouri. So, but overall, I think it's a good class. If you look at the 247, they're 29th, which is usually about where Kentucky seems to finish about every year, anywhere from 25th to 30th. I think there's some really good players, maybe some guys who can come in from day one and possibly start. And I don't know how much you've been following the what's been going on the last couple of days, but one thing you'll notice is that Kentucky in the class signed 4 wide receivers, which is probably a good thing because everyone that's wide receiver seems to be leaving. So I don't know if you've heard all the news yet, if the Mark Rogers audience has heard the news, but Dane Key's in the transfer portal. Barry Brown put his name in the transfer portal today. Neither one I could say wasn't unexpected. And then also Anthony Brown-Stevens, a third wide receiver, has also put his name in the portal along with 3 tight ends. So, there's going to be Stoops said it after the Louisville game. He expected a lot of turnover within the program, and we're 72 hours from that Louisville loss, and it's already happening. So,
do you think that's a situation, Kevin, where these guys got handed a nice bankroll, or a situation where, hey, we're looking out for our NFL future and we think we can find a better quarterback situation somewhere?
I think that's got a lot to do with it. If you watch this year, obviously, Brock Vandagriff had all the hype in the world and just didn't turn out to be what the Big Blue Nation hoped it was going to be. A lot of that, I think, had to do with the fact that for a third year in a row, if you watch Kentucky, you saw a quarterback running for his life a lot of the time. That's the one thing that needs to be fixed through the transfer portal. Kentucky needs whatever it costs, whatever they need to find like 2 really good offensive linemen in the portal. But as far as Key and Brown, there's been rumors of him transferring every year that he's been at Kentucky. And now it finally happened. Key, I was a little more surprised just because, his father played here and, he's from Lexington, but we'll see. I don't know who you had on before. Georgia, if I were laying odds, I would bet Georgia possibly for Dane Key, just for no other reason than apparently his girlfriend plays volleyball down there. So, why not, right?
Yeah, we've had to track the destination or the location of some of these girlfriends here with the transfer portal
right
over the last couple of years. Yeah, that seems to be something that has been added to our list of things to track.
Right, but talking about the list, Kentucky's list this year, like I said, I think there's 3 or 4 guys who can come in immediately and play. One of them, a guy I'm really, really high on, is Andrew Purcell. As you see, he's the top-rated player by Rivals. Really, really good secondary player out of Alabama. Maxwell Hairston is all but seems to be a given that he's going to go pro, and the Cats probably going to lose 2 or 3 more guys either through the portal and have a couple graduating. So he's a guy who could probably come in right away. And Mikael Skinner, the next guy on the list from South Carolina, he was a guy that we were all watching very closely with his commitment because he's from South Carolina. The Gamecocks were making a huge pitch to try to get him to stay in the home state, but he remained with Kentucky. He's a guy. Vince Marrow said he was, Kentucky's tight ends coach, said he was one of the best prospects he's ever signed. So he's a guy I think who could come in and play, probably play immediately. As I said, three tight ends have already transferred out of the program. Whether playing time, I'm sure has a lot to do with it. But like I said, he could come in. Willie Rodriguez, who was a freshman this year, did some really, really good things at the end of the year. He's probably going to be one-year tight ends, and Skinner could be another one. And then the next guy, Javion Campbell, really, really great story. He's from Western Hills High School in Frankfort, which is the same, which is about 25 miles from Lexington. It's the same high school that produced Wan'Dale Robinson. When he committed to Kentucky, Wan'Dale was there in attendance. Is a really interesting story. He's only been playing football for a couple of years. He's the all-time leading scorer in basketball at Western Hills, but with his size and I was talking to the football coach and said, "Hey, you should try to come out and play football," and he did. And the story he told was that his first play he got a sack, and he was like, "Hey, this football thing might be kind of fun." So he's another guy. Like I said, Deion Walker is probably is going to be gone to the NFL draft. JJ Weaver, they're going to lose a lot of guys at the edge position. So he's another guy who could come in and play immediately. And the thing about it is, there's a lot of holes right now. So this whole off season is going to be very interesting to see what happens. But like I said, I like the recruiting class. The station that I work for, we have Vince Marrow on every year. Yes, that's another guy I was going to talk about, Cam Miller, the flip from Wisconsin. I think he can do some big things as well. But Marrow was, of course, they're going to say they're excited about the class and they're going to get this thing turned back in the right direction. Everybody, 4-8. It's 1 year. Everybody's trying to say it's just 1 year, so we'll see what happens, next year. But I'm excited about the class they had and some of the guys that we talked about there. I think you come in and do some really good things starting from the beginning next year.
Kevin McGuffey, last word on college football, breaking down the Cats for us, the 2025 class. They're in the top 30 in the nation. Kevin, always good to see you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
We won't be talking about a bowl game this year.
No, but I was going to throw in a shameless plug. Go to Last Word on College Football. Check out my bowl projections. I'm updating them tonight, actually, and there'll be a fresh batch of predictions tomorrow. So we have 4 games for sure that we know that the matchups have already been set. So then, come in, check it out tomorrow and see what you think. Then I'll have a final projection Sunday morning before all the picks come out. So again, thank you for having me on as always. Greatly appreciate it. I know you got more people to talk to, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Kevin. Let's keep it rolling. It's all SEC at this point. Here we go. Kyle Loomis stopping by, E2C Network. Auburn, unfortunately, another 5-7 campaign. But the recruiting looks much better. So if you can turn the page, Auburn fans, from the regular season results to the recruiting rankings, you'll get a smile on your face like Kyle has right here. Kyle, how you doing?
Yeah, you're right. Certainly, I'm doing very well. I have a smile on my face because the recruiting is basically the main thing that we had to be happy about. Not a great year, as you talked about. It's kind of appropriate that we had Kentucky on before us because probably very similar, very underwhelming years. And the recruiting can certainly make that a lot better, especially when you're talking about some of the areas where we brought in some of these guys. And certainly, if you enjoy talking about rankings and stuff, Hugh Freeze does it again, 2 classes in a row, his first 2 full classes in the top 10 for nationally for Auburn. So that's quite an impressive thing to do, given the lack of on the field results.
All right. So looking at this class, who do you like?
So many. I'm going to be honest with you, Mark. When we were doing our post live stream after the press conference, the more I started talking about this class, the more it became very clear to me how well put together this class was. And I know that may be an overstatement or an understatement because, right, they're obviously filling the needs that they have, the roles that need to be filled. But I just really started looking at some of these groups and really liked what I saw. If you look at the linebackers, for instance, you're going to, if you know what's happening at Auburn, you're about to lose a ton of senior leadership, a ton of talent at the linebacker group, whether it's Eugene Asante, Austin Keys, Dorian Mausi, several others that are probably not going to be here. So there's a lot of opportunity, yes, for guys who are currently there, like DeMarcus Reddick, who are younger and have been kind of making their way up into more playing time. But that leaves opportunities for certain linebackers that are being coming in this class. Bryce Dees being one of those out of Maryland. More on that Maryland story in just a little bit. That was a very interesting thing yesterday as well. You've got Jacaleb Falk, who I've seen kind of projected both ways, an edge rusher and a linebacker. Most people have him listed as a linebacker, and that's actually the brother of Keldrick Falk, the superstar edge rusher at Auburn right now. So that's obviously someone that you want to look at. And our other individual, Elijah Melendez. I don't know if you've looked at this guy. Every picture that he puts of himself is just how jacked he is. I mean, so he just looks like a linebacker. So I really like what I see out of this group. I see a variety of linebacker talent and strengths. I love having another Falk in the fold here at Auburn. We're all about family here after all. And I just got a lot of hope for that group, even though that there's not going to be a lot of senior leadership. It might be an area for Auburn to go find somebody to be a leader in the transfer portal this year to help that group continue to move into that role. But honestly, I was shocked the more I talked about this yesterday, how much I loved the linebacker class for Auburn in this 2025 class. That's probably the first one that stuck out to me.
And so last year was the wide receiver core.
Yes. You certainly, I knew we were going to get there at some point. So let's go ahead and tackle that. The wide receiver core last year was the story. Freeze 4, freeze 5. If, a 17-year-old, as they love to call him, Brian Williams, decided to flip over to Auburn at the last minute, but that obviously didn't happen. But we're happy with the freeze 4. Two things on this. The wide receiver group this year, when you talk about hype, is probably less so just because of the hype that was built around last year's. It was named the Freeze 4 after all, with Cam Coleman, with Bryce Kane, with Perry Thompson, and with Malcolm Simmons. You do have 3 that you're bringing in this year. The headliner obviously is going to be, the Smith brothers. Well, now he's called Duke Smith. His name is Derek Smith, but they switched it over to Duke Smith on this official list from Auburn. It kind of threw me off a little bit before we came live here. Derek Smith and Eric Smith coming from Selma. So that is going to be two kind of another little family storyline there that you've got to look forward to. And then the other wide receiver, I've lost my place on him in here in this list, and I cannot find him at this current time. But there's another one in there that we brought. Sam Turner, the flip from Georgia Tech. But what I want to use this to segue into is what's the big group that maybe should be getting more attention, and it might be the defensive back group. And I kind of put this in my notes of things to talk with you about. Should this be the Freeze 4 or 5 of this year because of how complete this group is? Defensive backs, obviously, you have in a traditional defense, you've got 2 cornerbacks, 2 safeties. I know there's nickel backs, all that stuff. We're just talking about basics here. You have brought in 5 individuals and had an opportunity to bring in someone else as well that did not decide to sign with Auburn on signing day. But these 5 that are here have just completed all those needs and then some. You're talking about cornerbacks Donovan Starr, cornerback Devin Williams, cornerback Blake Woodby, and then safeties Anquan Fagans and safety Eric Winters. So not only have you got one at each spot, but you've got an extra cornerback there as well. I think this is going to be the next wave of great defensive backs at Auburn. And there are already some there at Auburn right now. They're going to be the wave that's currently there. But I'm really excited about this group. Probably the only interesting storyline of yesterday that was kind of like, will he, won't he? Other than Offord, the cornerback who decided to not only flip from Iowa State, but over to Oregon and had Auburn in the mix there too, was the fact that Donovan Starr in this cornerback group was kind of waffling on what he wanted to do. The reports were he was committed to Auburn for a long time. He was going to push back his decision. And then suddenly when Offord doesn't go to Auburn, he wants to do, or at least the day of, he wants to do his decision that day. So you got to kind of think those two were connected there. either way, it was kind of like a nice little end cap because the signing came during the end of the day press conference for Coach Hugh Freeze. So that was probably the big end cap that we were all looking for, and what was relatively a quieter National Signing Day for Auburn.
Kyle Loomis here from E2C Network, tracking the Auburn football story, but the Auburn athletic story and the Auburn community. It's all Auburn at E2C Network. And Kyle, we're not going to let you go without throwing this one out there, because you talk about what's being talked about. What's going to be talked about and is already started, of course, is the pursuit of a quarterback in the transfer portal. Miller Moss is out there, Caden Salter of Liberty. What are your thoughts about that possible pursuit?
Well, in addition to that, obviously Deuce Knight factors into this equation as well. With him being retained, there was some question about would there be a flip there on National Signing Day. So he factors into that decision, but only in so much that he's filling a spot that is vacated by obviously an exiting Peyton Thorne. But there's another spot as well, Holden Garner. So when people ask me, will we take a transfer portal quarterback? The numbers say yes. The question is who it's going to be, in which some of those names that you brought up, I've heard those same exact things. I have literally no clue, to be honest with you, where they're going to go with this. To me, I really value listening to what the coaches are saying. And Coach Freeze is adamant about trying to focus on building up this team from bottom up, from younger guys up. And so is it time to hand over the reins fully to a Walker White, a Hank Brown, or is it a Deuce Knight? I get the stinking suspicion we're not going to hand over the reins to Deuce Knight that quick. I could be wrong, but there are several options out there. I've seen Miller Moss thrown around the most recently. That seems to be the one that gets the most play right now. Salter is another one as well. But I think we're in for a wild little ride with this quarterback transfer portal situation, but certainly there is room for one, and I expect us to take one.
All right, Kyle, we'll be right there with you. So as soon as they make a decision, we'll track you down.
That sounds good. We'll be happy to talk about it, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kyle. You have a good rest of your week. We'll see you soon. All right, we'll continue right here at the Voice of College Football, running down as many teams as we can possibly get to. We've got Ty Hudson stopping by.
What's going on, Mark?
Ty, what's going on?
Oh, just chilling, drinking a cranberry limeade and enjoying a delicious cigar.
Okay, all right. Is that a cigar that you broke out for National Signing Day?
Yeah, plenty for Hog. Well, there's some things that Hog fans should be excited about. I mean, was it a top 5 SEC class? No. When does that ever happen here? Never. But they got a couple flips late, Mark. So they're feeling pretty good.
Tell us about the flips.
Well, we got to work on pronouncing his last name, or when I say we, I mean me. But they flipped UCLA 4-star quarterback Madden Iamaleava. And I'm just going to call him Madden the rest of the night, because I'm not going to keep trying to do that, because it's that thing where you think about it and then you mess it up. So you know who I'm talking about now.
I think you nailed it
when I say Madden. Yeah, big flip. And a guy with a lot of potential. We know who his big brother is. So very nice flip for Arkansas. Bit of a surprise. And then they flipped Jace Brown, also from Long Beach, California, who was a UCLA commit. Like this kid a lot. Big-bodied receiver. Apparently he's been killing it in these 7-on-7 camps and has looked really good. Kind of surprised he hasn't gotten that 4th star yet. Now that he's committed to Arkansas, I'm sure that won't happen, as Arkansas fans will tell you. They feel like they get cheated when these kids commit to Arkansas in terms of star power. But yeah, a couple nice flips there.
Did this class turn out to be as good as people expected, or better?
That's a good question. Well, so Tavion Wallace, the 4-star linebacker, he's about 6'1", 6'2", 215, 220. Of course, there's a lot to love about this kid, right? He's out of Georgia, again, 4-star, considered a top, one of the better linebackers in the class. A lot of rumors that he was going to flip to Florida State, and that was kind of the narrative going into the last I want to say a couple of weeks. Well, he ended up signing with Arkansas, so that was nice. And then they kept Kevin Otis. I don't know that there was any real threat of him not signing with Arkansas, but I do remember his recruiting was popping there for a while. And this is a guy on some recruiting sites that had him as high as a 4-star, unless that's changed. And then Grayson Wilson, who was also just as surprised as Hog fans were when they flipped Madden from UCLA, the quarterback, but he's also a 3 or 4-star committed quarterback, and he signed with Arkansas. I don't know if I would say this is about on par with what Sam does. It's going to be about a top 30 recruiting class. It's probably not a big surprise. It's the individuals, again, with Madden, that's probably the nicest bit of surprise, and the fact that it came on signing day I'm sure a lot of Hog fans will tell you this probably was a little bit better than they thought, but the one, well, there's a couple of negatives, right? I mean, they whiffed on some kids, as everybody does going through the recruiting cycles, but Connor Howes, who signed with Ole Miss today, they were expecting him to sign, but he ended up signing. He was committed to Arkansas, and he ended up signing with Ole Miss, but he's a 4-star, 247 composite 4-star, and he was someone I really wanted them to nail down, and unfortunately they couldn't do it. But overall, I mean, it's about what I expect, and I think most fans would agree with that. I'm sure they would love to see it be better, but we got to be real here. This is a team that's won 10 games combined the last 2 seasons.
Ty Hudson's here, folks, from Tusk Talk with Ty. It's right here on YouTube. Check out his work right there, covering Arkansas athletics across the board. Of course, basketball's in full swing now at this point. Sam Pittman got a contract extension. How is Razorback Nation taking that?
Well, I'll say this. The announcement was that they're keeping him. He gets, if I understand it correctly, if he wins the bowl game, that extension is automatically added on. I could be wrong about that. You're really good at keeping up. You're better at keeping up with that than I am. I'll tell you that much. I think his contract says if he gets that 7th win, it's an extension. But again, I'm bad about the contract stuff. But fans not really thrilled. If I'm being honest, let's just be real. Not thrilled about the fact that he went 6-6 just 2 years ago. He won 4 games last year, with the only notable win being the first time that Arkansas ever went down to Gainesville and beat Florida, and that was not a good Florida team. So going 4-8, and then you turn around this year. With all the hype around sorry, I got people DMing me and I'm getting distracted. All the hype around Petrino and bringing in this kid from Boise State, the quarterback, Taylon Green, there was some excitement that maybe, hey, Petrino's back. Obviously, you and I talked about that when that all went down. That was nuts. But I guess the excitement was that this was going to be a high-flying, high-scoring offense. They're going to get 34, 35 points a game. They're going to rack up tons of yards. They got the yardage part right. They just couldn't score a whole lot. So, yeah, 6-6 is just not enough. And a lot of people, I would argue, a lot of Hog fans they're ready to walk away from Sam. So here we go. Year 6, he's got even more pressure on him. And I don't envy the man. Outside of his wallet, I don't envy the man.
But you're one of the few teams that seems out there that seems to be pretty settled at quarterback, right? It's just going to be Taylon Green next year.
With Malachi in the portal, first off, I don't know what to expect out of Madden. I have a hard time seeing, and Mark, you've done this for a long time. Yes, freshman quarterback have come in and beaten the odds before. They've done it at Arkansas. I can remember when Mitch Mustaine came in, 5-star quarterback out of Springdale, a long time ago. He didn't win the starting job until they put him in late in the game against USC. They're already getting frog stomped, and he takes the place of Casey Dick, and then he's the starting freshman quarterback the remainder of the season until they put Casey Dick back in at the end of the year. it's rare that a true freshman quarterback is going to come in and dethrone, especially a guy like Talon, who now has a year under his belt in the Petrino offense. He's got all kinds of athletic ability, a lot of stuff he needs to work on. Again, he's definitely not above criticism whatsoever. But, yeah, it's pretty – I would argue it's settled, but I wonder how much these youngsters, maybe push them a little bit. But what I think a lot of fans wanted, they wanted to keep Malachi out of that portal, and they wanted a real battle in the offseason between Malachi and Talon Green. And unless Malachi withdraws his name, assuming he puts his name in next Monday when the portal officially opens, they're going to have just Talon, and that's really going to be it. I don't see KJ Jackson, who'll be a redshirt freshman, left-handed quarterback, by the way, also a dual threat kid, really good arm, actually. I don't see him pushing Talon. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it unless he makes a huge leap, which is always possible. But yeah, the quarterback room, I would say, it feels pretty much settled. I'm curious how much the younger quarterbacks get involved, if they push for maybe one of these guys push KJ Jackson, and then you kind of go from there. But I'm with the fans on this. I really wanted Malachi back, and I wanted to see some pressure ratcheted up on Talon Green.
All right, Ty. When is the next time you're going to be live so people know when to catch you?
I'm hoping tomorrow. I've been crazy busy this week I've been live and I've got stuff going on with Patreon. With the portal, it's nuts right now. It's my Patreon Discord chat's going crazy, and trying to do my best keeping up with that and the portal targets and everything. I'm hoping I can go live tomorrow. If not, I'll for sure be back for the Arkansas post game for basketball, but possibility of tomorrow. But so much to cover. As you know, this time of year, it's crazy. You're busier than I am. So with all these SEC folks coming on here, and then you've got your hey, I want your opinion though, really quick. I may have missed it. I know you got other callers. How'd you feel about Alabama getting in? I want to know.
Alabama has a better resume than Miami.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I know that they lost an ugly game at Oklahoma. They didn't just lose. They got stopped. They scored 3 points. Scoring 3 points looks ugly, but for some reason, people get more offended by an offense scoring 3 points than like a defense giving up 45 or 50 points. That seems to be fine with them.
Yeah.
But yes, atrocious loss. The Vandy loss looked horrible at the time. Then Vandy played good football for a few weeks and it looked better. And then they tailed off at the end of the year. So the Vandy loss, that's not a good loss either. But by the way, I'm glad you brought that up, because if I actually kick myself in gear, like I don't have anything else to do, but I've got all sorts of comparisons between Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, SMU, Arizona State, Iowa State, because the loser of that game's not getting in, but just to appease people and show that I'm going to, compare them all down to the hilt. I got all the 9-3, 10-2 teams here, and nobody has 4 wins like Georgia, South Carolina, LSU, and Missouri. None of these teams.
You sound like an SEC homer, Mark.
Tell it like it is.
I know you do. I've been around for a little bit. I know you do. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, Ty. Good to see you.
You too, man.
Yeah, we'll catch you soon.
Absolutely. Take it easy.
That, of course, our buddy Ty Hudson there from Tusk Talk with Ty. All right, let's keep it rolling. And, of course, somebody's got to be number one. And so I guess that's got to be Texas. Texas number one in the recruiting rankings. And shoot, if Oregon loses and they win on Saturday, they'll be the number one seed in the college football playoffs too. Got Matthew Miller here, holds down our Texas show, of course, on the Texas channel. That's every Monday, and then every Tuesday is the SEC show. Hey, Matthew, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, I am doing well, doing very well.
All right. Well, I think if you ran down every talented player in this class, we would be here for a while. So I'll ask you just to hit the highlights. Was there any late day drama for Texas?
So the drama came the day before. We got news that an unnamed player would be coming to Texas, and it was kind of a lot of like reports where it was going to be a player that Texas wasn't really in communication with, which that was kind of a lie because he was actually committed to Texas, flipped to LSU, and then committed back to Texas, which rarely happens. You see it more in the NIL era now because they narrow it down to 2 or 3, and then you kind of flip back and forth, it seems like. And his name is Cade Phillips. Depending on the source, he's upper 4-star or 5-star cornerback, top 10 cornerback in the country. We won the battle with him over LSU. I know the LSU people were starting to melt down over that because he's a very talented player. And overall, this class, I just love the versatility of this class, especially on the offensive side. You get 3 very good wide receivers. You get Khalil Lockett, who, in my opinion, I actually think he's the best wide receiver in the country. I've said this for a while now. This isn't something I'm saying now. I think he's better than DeCorian Moore. If I'm wrong on that, that's fine. Dalen McCutcheon, a 4-star who he flipped from Florida State a couple months ago from Lovejoy in Texas. Jamie French, also from Mandarin High School in Florida. So you get 3 studs at the wide receiver position. But to me, what you get in this class is the versatility at the side end position. You get Michael Terry, the #1 athlete in the country, who Texas has already said he's going to play wide receiver. He will play tight end. He will play running back, and he will play H-back as well, so a fullback type of position. And Sark will use him all over the field to create mismatches. And then you get Nick Townsend, who is an absolute freak. The guy runs, I think, like a 10.7 100-meter yard dash as a tight end. So freak athlete. And then you get Emery Winston, who's a 3-star tight end. So the versatility that this offense is going to have going forward with Arch Manning, who I'm going to tell people right now, I think there's a better chance this guy plays 2 years at Texas than most believe at this point. I think those are the reports coming out now, and they have been for a while. He wants seasoning in college. So with these athletes, with Arch Manning throwing them the football, I think there's a very, very good chance this offense becomes super scary. It hasn't been super scary this year, but I think it's going to be in the future with this class.
Got Matthew Miller on the line, hosts our Texas show every Monday. That's at 8 Eastern?
Yes.
8 Eastern on Monday on the Texas channel. The SEC shows on Tuesday, 8 Eastern. Is there anybody that has been a little less regarded, a little bit more under the radar that you like in this class?
Yeah, so I think you can actually scroll down to the very bottom of this list, Mark. His name is Caleb Chester. He is a 3-star cornerback, very low rated. I love the measurables. 6'1", probably 6'2" now, 175, I believe. Really good player. I like him a lot. He fits into this mold of what Steve Sarkisian is recruiting on the defensive side of the ball, which is position versatility, and I guess a little bit on the offense, but also extremely great athleticism as well, and a frame that can put on weight. You see that all along the defense, especially the defensive line, but then you get that with a Caleb Chester. You get that with the Cade Phillips, who's very long too. He's also 6'2", the guy we just talked about. Grayson Littleton at cornerback, a 4-star. They're all like over 6'1", and they're long, lanky guys that can play the ball, intercept the ball, and be a playmaker. And we see that with the Texas defense this year. They have, I believe they're leading the country with interceptions with 17 or 18. So they're definitely just passing the baton here with these guys coming in. And then Jonah Williams, the 5-star #1 recruit, I believe, in our class. He'll play a little bit of safety. I think you'll see him at nickel at certain times. I think you'll see him at linebacker. He's also going to play baseball. And actually, we got him because Jim Schlossnagle left Texas A&M to go to Texas. That was a big deal over the summer. And Jonah Williams loved Jim Schlossnagle, and he basically decided once that happened, he was going to go to Texas because he liked the football program. He wasn't sure about the baseball program at Texas, but once we stole him away, it was all he was all on board for Texas.
So during this down time for Texas football, 2009 up until 2 or 3 years ago, the recruiting classes were still largely stellar, but not pushing for #1 in the country. So is this the SEC effect? Is this Sark just being this good? And obviously parlaying some success on the field can't hurt.
Yeah, so I think there's like 3 or 4 things that come together. One, you have to admit NIL matters. Texas is definitely an NIL juggernaut. This is the day and age we live in. But also, I believe the on-field success does not hurt that. There's a chance you win the SEC in the first year, and now you have the SEC brand on your chest. That is definitely going to help, along with the NIL. And #1 to me, because all these 5- and 4-star guys think they can get to the NFL. That is the ego they have when they step on campus. We are finally developing players. That is something that was not happening under the other coaches. Charlie Strong didn't do it. Tom Herman didn't do it. He didn't make any of the players better. The players here are getting better under Steve Sarkisian. We've seen that. They had 11 or 12 guys drafted last year in the NFL. We're going to have at least 10 or 9 or 10 guys this year minimum to get drafted in the NFL. That is why they are starting to come here, and it's only going to get better. And I didn't even mention this. Tomorrow, Texas solidifies this number 1 class if they're able to get him. The number 2 defensive lineman in all of the country, and Justice Terry commits tomorrow at noon Eastern time. It's going to come down to Texas or Georgia. Actually, that's what's going to decide the number 1 class. If Georgia lands him, they're going to have the number 1 class. If Texas lands him, at worst, I think we finished number 3, but it's still a really good class. Sark now has gone 5th, 3rd, 5th, and another top 3 finish. He is stacking classes like you have to. If you want to win a national championship, you have to recruit at a top 12 level through all 4 years. And if you're not going to do that, then you have to get a generational quarterback. I believe we have a generational quarterback on the roster, plus we are doing that. So he's done a phenomenal job. And I think NIL, player development, and then Texas winning and being in the SEC all has something to do with that.
Jackson, we appreciate you dropping the link to the Texas channel there, folks. Check it out. Again, Matthew's live every Monday on the Texas channel, so check out the content there. And again, the link is right there, so it's only a click away to check out Matthew's most recent show and the video clips from the shows and other content. This matchup against Georgia, why would you expect things to be different this time around, other than the obvious that history shows us that the rematch is typically much different than the first game? But in regards to matchups, what do you think is important on Saturday night? And how important is this game to Texas?
So because it's our first year in the SEC, I was actually on the Georgia channel on the Voice of College Football as well, and I got asked that question. I think because it's the first year in the SEC, I think it is important. I think you want to come in here and win this league in your first year. I think it definitely helps in recruiting. It helps with the brand. It helps with everything. So I think it is important in that regard. Obviously, we're still going to be in the college football playoff. The thing is, if you lose this game, to me, are you going to be the 5 seed? Because then I would actually rather lose this game and be the 5 seed because I know who I'm playing the first 2 rounds. And let's be honest here. I think Texas rolls both Arizona State and UNLV or Boise State or whatever matchup you get. Now, if you can't promise me that, I want to win this game because I think you'll be the number 2 seed at worst. So that's my opinion on that. And in the matchup wise, that game was an outlier. I know people are going to say, oh, you're a Texas fan, you're a Texas fan. Georgia had 280 or 58 or 285 yards offense, whatever it was. It wasn't very good. And they scored 30 points. They did that because 4 out of the 6 drives they scored on, they got the ball inside the Texas 35 or better. That is not going to happen Saturday. I'm very confident in saying that. Now, what could happen and what could scare me is Quinn Ewers may not be able to step up in the pocket like he did just in that game, and he got absolutely dominated in that game. I know the offensive line didn't play great, but they played good enough to where there were still lanes for him to step up into, and he did not do that. I believe there were 7 sacks that night, 6 on Quinn Ewers, 1 on Arch Manning. And I think 4 of those were on the quarterbacks. They did not step up into lanes. They ran out of clean pockets for whatever reason. And a lot of that had to do with the disguises Georgia was doing on the back end. And they also locked up very well. So I think Sark he has to change the game plan. Texas likes to start out going east and west. You cannot do that in this game. We cannot throw screens early on. It has to be north and south. It has to be through the running game, which has come on the last month. Trey Wiseman has played phenomenal the last month, as well as the offensive line. So they have to be able to run this football. They have to be able to hit plays down the field. And then if you want to get to the screen game, I think you can do that. But you cannot start out with the screen game in this game. Georgia is way too well coached. They played on their toes all night long and got downhill and attacked Texas. Texas has to avoid that. I think it's going to be a really close game, and I'm excited to watch it. And I think Texas is going to pull it out. I think it's going to be close, though.
Yeah, it should be a heck of a ball game, but not quite the stakes that we've seen in the past. And again, Georgia obviously would get probably the 2 seed, and Texas the 1 or the 2 seed, depending on what Oregon does. And then we go from there. Georgia loses. They probably still get a home game. Texas loses. They probably get the 5, although, Penn State's there as well, depending on maybe how the deficits involved in those 2 games. Matthew, I don't know if you noticed, but our favorite plus or minus 3 comes into play now that we finished up the regular season. So can you recall who in the SEC would have hit the plus or minus 3?
A lot of teams. Oklahoma, and I love that one because that was one I was on early on.
10
Auburn,
and 2, 6 and 6.
Did Auburn or no?
No.
Tennessee?
No.
No. I'm trying to think who hit it. Texas didn't hit it. Alabama hit. Did Alabama hit it? No. Oklahoma's the only one I can think of, unless Kentucky. Did Kentucky win 7 games last year?
Yes.
Okay, so they're number 2. Vanderbilt.
Yep. 2 and 10,
That's
6 and 6.
I'm trying to think who else. That's all I can think of.
I'm almost positive there's just one more. So, folks, we're talking plus or minus 3. It's one of my favorite stats. So, which schools went either increasing in 3 wins or more or decreasing from the previous season? So, your high risers and your
South Carolina.
Yes, South Carolina, 5 and 7, 9 and 3, 4-game difference. So 4 in the SEC.
Yeah, which is a little bit. It's a little bit less than normal, isn't it? Usually get 5 or 6.
There were 7 in the Big Ten.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I predicted South Carolina to go 7 and 5, so I was higher on them than most. I did not see 9 and 3, so I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you think? Or I should say this: if Georgia loses this game, is it possible, because they want to avoid a rematch with Texas for a 3rd time, that they put them at the 8 or 9? And if Texas is the 2 seed, I should say.
They shouldn't do any of that, but they will. And I get it. It's an entertainment product. So if Georgia loses, they're 10 and 3. Then what do we got? We've got, let's say, Oregon 1,
wins.
Texas 2. We get the other 2. And then we've got Penn State 5, unless they lose. And maybe it's Ohio State. Who knows? Notre Dame 5. Penn State, Ohio State in some order, 5, 6, 7. Then we go Georgia. I guess they keep them in front of Tennessee because of the head-to-head, even though they've got a 3rd loss. So, yeah, then they're going to have to do something with Tennessee to avoid. I don't know if they want Georgia and Tennessee playing in the first round either.
Yeah, that you're going to have rematches, but it would suck to. I'm going to be honest. I don't want to play Georgia a 3rd time, especially 2 times in a month period. I don't want to do that. It's going to be interesting, especially since I think that's our worst matchup out of all the teams. I think Georgia just matches up really well versus us, but I think it's going to be a close game.
No doubt. All right, Matthew. Appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, no problem, Mark.
Matthew Miller, again, has a Texas show every Monday at 8 Eastern. And Jackson has dropped the Texas link there in the chat. Okay. We have some more guests on the docket. Hopefully, they're stopping by. We've got a number of guests. But in the meantime, we're going to go through recruiting rankings. We're going to go through the top 300 players in the nation and see who has yet to commit and sign. And then like to look through this transfer portal because that thing is humming already. Okay. Here we've got the top players in college football and high school football transitioning to college. We've got, according to 247 Sports, there you see the players. Let's see who our first player is off the board who has not committed. So we've got, so both Jed and Matthew repping Georgia and Texas talked about Justice Terry, offensive lineman. So he's going to make his announcement on Friday. Georgia looks like the lean there, according to 247 Sports. Texas in the running. It's down to Georgia, Texas for Justice Terry, top 10 player in the nation, offensive lineman there. We have who else? Anybody else that has not yet signed? No one else in the top 100. Look at that. Got to have somebody else step up here. We've got Jesse Arnold, edge rusher, who's most likely going to land at Florida State. Player number 146, according to 247 Sports, off the edge, 6'5", 245. So he has not signed as of yet. Then we got Zaire Mathis, edge rusher, leaning Ohio State out of Philadelphia. Player number 159 would help the Buckeyes class, but he is not signed. And then elsewhere in the top 300, that's only 3 players. There's 4. McKay Madsen, athlete, don't know which position he plays. Anytime we see athlete, it's typically a wide receiver or a defensive back. But more recently, it's been a tight end or a linebacker. But McKay Madsen, leaning Oregon, he's a top 200 player. And then we've got Chester Brown, offensive tackle, number 226, leaning UCF. So this is only about 5 to 6 players in the top 250 in the nation who have yet to sign. Let's talk some Huskers. We got Justin Adams stopping by from our Nebraska channel. Justin, appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I just got my 2025 signing day recap posted on the Husker channel, and kind of went through the previous few years and kind of how this class stacked up against those. So excited to talk about it. Pretty drama-free signing day overall. So that's nice.
There you go, folks. As soon as you get done here, check out Justin's work on evaluating this year's Nebraska class. It'll be a little bit more in depth than what we can get to here. Justin, what are your initial thoughts about this class in terms of, did it land about where you thought, or were you a bit elated or disappointed?
No, it was pretty much went how I expected. We actually did get some good news in Jeremiah Jones, who was crystal ball to Missouri to flip over there, but Nebraska was able to, I think, up their NIL package and kind of seal the deal on him. He was originally committed to us, crystal ball to flip. So that was the one, probably the biggest surprise. I mean, Cortez Mills was another one. We had a big kind of battle against Oklahoma for him, big wide receiver out of Homestead, Florida. He, kind of it was weird in the days leading up, because there was a belief that Cortez was going to flip to Nebraska about 5 days prior. And then over the next few days, it kind of became a little uncertain. Then people were thinking he might stick with Oklahoma. It was kind of probably one of the more interesting signing day experiences with how he went about it. Normally it's the hat throw and all that stuff, but he was at the table, announced he was going to go to Oklahoma, took his top shirt off, had the Oklahoma shirt on. He let it go for a little bit. And, sat back down at the table, said Boomer Sooner. And then he said, what, this shirt don't feel right. And then he switched over to Nebraska, and ultimately we were able to sign him. So high level rated wide receiver there, just a highlight reel in the making. I can't wait to see him in Dana Holgerson's offense. At the top, we had Dawson Merritt, the linebacker. Nebraska was in a battle in this kind of throughout the season with Alabama. And Nebraska wasn't originally in his top 6-7 teams. But they snuck in late in the process and were able to steal him away from Bama. So he originally committed to Alabama, ended up going to Nebraska in the long term. So excited to see about him. Christian Jones, the linebacker you see there from Nebraska. Tony White, defensive coordinator, out. So it was one of those things, just seeing how the class would hold together with losing him and our defensive line coach, Terrence Knighton. Christian Jones, he basically reaffirmed right when we lost him that he was going to ultimately sign with Nebraska. So exciting stuff there. Isaiah Mosey right below him. His dad, Jamar Mosey, is one of our coaches on the roster. We got him. So he was originally committed to Oregon, but we ended up hiring his dad, Jamar Mosey, who was a coach out there, really, really good high school head football coach, turned that team around and was able to keep them at a pretty sustainable high level for I think he coached there for a total of 10 years, completely turned that program around. And Isaiah Mosey ultimately flipped over to Nebraska, and they had a very emotional kind of video, them two side by side. So he'll be working directly with his son there. So, you know, just a really good connection there. So I'm hopeful of that. And his skill set is just, you know, tremendous anyways. So we got, you know, kind of back in that Missouri area, Kansas City, especially is a place we're trying to get a foothold back in. But I think the biggest thing since Matt Rule has taken over is the focus on the Nebraska area and the 500-mile radius. That was something that was completely lost on Scott Frost. And I did a video on it this offseason. He basically, in his first season, recruited about as many Nebraska players as Scott Frost did in his entire tenure. So he did 8 last year from the Nebraska area, 6 this year. That 500-mile radius is important, especially in a developmental program. Those are the players that will typically stick with your program for longer. TJ Lateef, the quarterback, you know, he is going to be that guy kind of in waiting from Dylan Raiola, Dayton Raiola. Dylan Raiola's older brother is going to be coming in the 2026 class. So there's a couple quarterbacks coming up here, but TJ Lateef got a really, really good arm. Just he can move the pocket pretty well, but overall, just you know, he plays at a pretty high level over there in California. And you know, there was a little bit of a kind of throughout the season, just a little bit of is he going to stay? But again, reaffirmed his commitment throughout the season, stuck with it. And then Jeremiah Jones, like I talked about him, he was the guy that was crystal ball to Missouri and ultimately stayed at Nebraska. And then one guy I'm excited about is a couple diamonds in the rough, down a little bit lower, is Jamarian Parker out of St. Louis, Missouri. Jamarian Parker is a running back, but he is the perfect type of running back for what Dana Holgorsen is going to run. And Jamarian Parker, I did a film review on him a while back. I am going to be doing a film review on every single player in this class. But yeah, he is just a playmaker, and he's just one of those guys that you can run him between the tackles. You can run him outside, but he's a dual threat guy. You're going to be able to throw the ball to him in space. He makes guys miss. So, you know, one of those guys that's a little bit lower in the class, but I think he's going to be an impact player for sure. And then Brian Tapu came over from New Zealand, only played 1 year of high school football on the offensive line, and was able to establish himself as a top 80 lineman in the class and 87 rated 3-star. So, you know, again, developmental program, excited to see what we can do with some of these guys that are a little bit more raw and just need a little bit more development. But overall, all in all, just a really good, well-rounded class. And when I was going through that top or the few last years of recruiting, this was the highest class we had in terms of the average. So, and by a couple points over a couple of the other ones. But Matt Rule's 2 classes here have been the highest in those previous 4 years and beyond, a little bit beyond that. So, yeah, just overall exciting stuff for the fan base. And not only do they fit in terms of position, but there's a lot of fits in terms of, you know, the actual build of these guys. You know, we got up a little bit longer with some of these guys in the defensive backfield. Something we were lacking is that length before last year. So just overall, really, really good specific type of recruiting that Matt Rule does. Has his developmental type of guys and has his instant impact players that can come in and play pretty quickly.
Folks, if you heard that, if you love Nebraska football, obviously you should be locked in with Justin on the Huskers channel. And Justin's got additional memberships available there. But if you just love recruiting, if you're a recruiting junkie, then you got like 21 film breakdowns that are coming your way on the Nebraska channel. So that'll be a whole lot of fun. And Justin knows what he's doing, breaking down film. So definitely check that out. And Justin, if there's anything I know about Matt Rule and recruiting, I know that he made a few visits, meaning like he makes as many visits as anybody in the country. Like he's all over the place and he's a grinder.
Yes, absolutely. He is all about building relationships, but not only that, he wants to get out and meet the families of the, you know, recruits and stuff like that. We had a couple of recruits last year talk about after their visits that he made, Dawson Merritt was one of them who ended up flipping from Alabama. He made, you know, Dawson's family feel like they were part of the visit. And one of the things that was, you know, I had heard in the back burner with Merritt was, you know, they were kind of divided. It was like his dad kind of wanted him to go to Nebraska. He committed to Alabama, but ultimately seemed like he followed his heart and flipped over. But that, you know, just in terms of how, you know, last year, Matt Rule keeping 78% of his offense or total production from 2023 to 2024 in a age where players are constantly hitting the recruiting class to return 78% of your total production year over year. And also did a very good job so far of holding the team together with losing Tony White and Terrence Knighton. And it's all relationships. He really is about these players and wants the best for them, not only as players, but young men. And he makes that pretty well known. So he's got a plan coming up with the 105 scholarship limits. Basically what he's going to do, he said he's going to turn it into kind of an NFL style thing where he'll have 53 players, 53-man roster, where those guys are going to be ready to play immediately. And then another 53 where he's going to kind of have those guys in developmental mode. And, the way he's going to cut it down is the guys that are ready and the guys that have been developing on pace, those guys are going to be the ones that sticks with it. And he's going to have conversation with the rest. So interesting to see how he will get that knocked down to the 105 scholarship limit in time for the season. But just really excited about, what he's done so far and just how he continues to build and really get us in play for a lot of higher level recruits than, David Sanders. We were in a battle with him. He ultimately committed to Tennessee, and he decided he was going to stick with Tennessee today over Ohio State. And but we were locked and loaded to the end with him and Michael Terry, a five position athlete, played quarterback everywhere. And ultimately he signed it with Texas, but proximity to home was very important with him. He's from Texas. So that was going to be an uphill battle, but Nebraska was like right there in the thick of it. Had an advantage of, at one point, a few days leading into it. But Texas has those resources, and Texas is a very good school to go play for. They're winning now. They are a team that, produces talent and gets talent out of there. So tough to battle with them, but it's good that Nebraska is in these battles with these teams and getting these guys to campus in 5 stars, which we weren't even doing previously. So, we're starting to see the groundwork being laid to where we're getting these guys to campus and get a lot of focus from these guys. But now the next step, we got to win.
And a few years ago, it was important to do all those things in regards to relationship building because, number one, it was just the right thing to do. And secondly, just to build relationships and to build a reputation that you are an upstanding program and you're going to do the right things and so forth. But now it's a business proposition because transfer portal's only spring practice away.
Yep.
We've seen it become so ridiculous now, especially that last cycle last year where guys didn't even step on the field with their first school and they made it through spring practice and thought, you know what? No, I'm going to hit the portal and go. So You got to build those relationships and you got to leave them in good standing because you might take advantage a year or two from now.
100%. Yeah. And it's kind of instilling in these guys that okay, maybe you'll make a little less money now, but I'm developing you for your future. And, I want the best for your future and, prove yourself, develop, and you'll have money in the future. It's one of those things. It's like, do you want to go all in now on the money, or do you want to go to the program that sets you up for the best for development? And I'm not saying Nebraska necessarily does that, but that is the plan Matt Rule has, is to really just develop these guys personally and athletically.
One more before I let you go, Justin. And again, everyone head on over to the Nebraska channel. Justin goes live every Tuesday at 7 Eastern. We're going to get to see Dylan Raiola one more time against a decent opponent. What are your thoughts about his development this season?
One of the things that really has kind of, and I understand it from the outside perspective because a lot of people didn't know this, but Marcus Satterfield, there's a reason that Matt Rule did what he has never done before. Marcus Satterfield was our offensive coordinator. He has been with Matt Rule everywhere he's been. And he was switched out for Dana Holgorsen a few weeks left in the season. And the final nail in the coffin was, it was a press conference where he went up there and he said, they asked him what his yards per play was, and he didn't know. And then they asked him, what would you like it to be? And he was like, I don't know. And the number he gave would have put us at 100th in the country. And he also stated that he's now understanding that you have to run the ball in the Big Ten to win games. And it was way too late in the process after over a year and a half to be doing that. And what we saw under him was just the play calling was atrocious. There was no rhyme or reason for the play call. The running back rotation made no sense. He was putting Raiola in terrible situations. Our offensive line was just leaking, and Raiola started taking hits. And like Glenn Thomas, our quarterback coach, says, he says, calm feet equal calm mind in the pocket for a quarterback. And when you're taking a lot of hits like that, it's hard, and especially as a true freshman, to have calm feet. And especially when your guys aren't getting in space because the play calling is terrible. Daniel Holgorsen came in, and simply what he did is he started targeting the short part of the field, 0 to 9 yards. Went from 21% the week before he came on to 31% the next week to 50% the next week. And that basically has kind of gotten Raio's confidence back. It got him calmer in the pocket. And even though in that Iowa game scored 10 points, the offense was moving the ball. Dylan Raiola was efficient in that game. A couple overthrows because of wind, and but he's missing some throws here and there, but he's a true freshman at the end of the day. But a lot of the season, it was just due to our play calling was a disaster. And like I said, Matt Rule's never done that in the season. He did that for a reason. And so I think we have a lot of things to be excited for next year under Holgorsen. Simply just making his reads a lot easier. He condensed the playbook. He said they were overcomplicating it. He's like, yeah, and I talked about that before we got rid of him. I'm like, if we're not executing, then simplify it. Stop trying to get more creative. Stop trying to do crazier stuff. Simplify the offense. It's going to be a lot better.
Yeah, I can appreciate a coach who trusts his eyes and trusts what he sees in the field, but he should be able to look at a stat sheet and understand whether what he's looking at is positive or negative. Math is required when you're dealing with football.
Absolutely.
All right, Justin, appreciate you. Thanks for being here for us to give us a breakdown on the Huskers, and we'll find out on Sunday where the bowl destination is.
Absolutely.
There's a bowl destination this year.
That's the silver lining here is hard to be upset about that after all this time.
All right, Justin.
All right. Have a good morning. Take care.
Appreciate Justin. Once again, it's Nebraska Football Talk every Tuesday at 7 Eastern, Tuesday at 8. So you got a double header you can do on Tuesdays, of course, here at the Voice of College Football with the Huskers at 7, Michigan football, 8 p.m. Eastern time every Tuesday and Thursday. We got TJ Konarski stopping by to break down the Michigan recruiting class. TJ, what's going on?
Not much, Mark. Just enjoying this wonderful signing week. As well as the outlook for the Michigan Wolverines. Feeling fantastic after that game about a week ago. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Yeah. Not thinking about that game last week myself, but
I get it.
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Doing well. So I'm collectively putting together like the last 20 games. That makes me feel better. But the last 1, 2, 3, 4, right in that range doesn't go over too well.
Yeah, it makes sense. I get that. Yeah, the when you scope out a little bit, it looks a little more rosy.
Yeah, it does.
I get it. Yes. Yeah. I mean, Mark. I mean, honestly, I think the signing day for Michigan. I think they hit it out of the park. So Michigan's going to finish here with the number 7 overall class in the nation, which any Michigan fan will let you know that we have been wanting a top 10. We've been wanting, as you know. The Buckeyes have always recruited extremely well, right? And Michigan has always been in that 8 to 17 range, which has never been quite good enough, right? So now that we're seeing Michigan get to a point in terms of financial support from its donors, we are seeing a class upgrade. You can obviously see when you look at players like Bryce Underwood, you look at Andrew Babaloa, even Nate Marshall has been landed. These are all much more top 100 players. I believe we have the 7th best average in all of college football right now. Right now, it's just an excellent class. They've done a great job filling all levels of the team. We have cornerstone players not only at quarterback but offensive line. We have Andrew Marsh, you're seeing right there listed, one of the top wide receivers. Honestly, just an extremely gifted player. May play early freshman year, as everybody knows. Michigan is in need of wide receiver help. He may get early run. Nate Marshall was a big-time get. We got him to flip the day before National Signing Day. Nobody saw it coming, by the way. And they just did a great job. They knocked it out of the park. Obviously, everyone knows we landed the number 1 player in the nation, and I'm sure a lot of, the viewers out there are like, yeah, for over $12 million. And, we did. But at the end of the day, we're all right with that. We have no issues with that. So I think, when you look at the class as a whole, Michigan's done a very good job for a first year for Sharon Moore. Landing a foundational class, and we're going to see how he supplements it with the portal. There is 2 more players that any Michigan fan or rival needs to be aware of that Michigan's currently looking at in terms of the late period, and that is Ty Haywood, 5-star offensive tackle, ranked number 20th in the nation. And then there is also Zaire Mathis, Mark. And so Zaire Mathis actually decommitted from Ohio State. I don't know if you're too familiar with that, but he decommitted from Ohio State. He is an edge player, and Michigan's looking to get both of those guys on campus after the dead period in either late December or January, and looking to close on 2 more top 100 players in the class.
Yeah, we actually we're going down the top 250 to 300 players just to see who was not yet signed. And yeah, talking about the Zaire Mathis situation as a decommit from Ohio State. So yeah, and anytime anyone at this point makes a criticism of the money situation, that's the way the game's played now. So really nobody can make any criticism of anybody from a money standpoint. It's just forget it now. That's part of the deal.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's where we are now in college football, and it's only going to get action. And what's interesting is with revenue sharing, with the House settlement that's going to be being decided in April, likely to be pushed through. June, July, I believe revenue sharing begins. The market is only going to get more flush with cash. So it's something that is not going away anytime soon, Mark. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams navigate it now. So, for example, for Michigan, the general manager for Michigan is Sean McGee, has a background in the NFL, formerly in front office work with the Chicago Bears. Michigan is taking this like a NFL front office approach. They have slotted. So one of their approaches and how they're navigating recruiting right now, and there's some players like, I know I see my guy Mike Fort in the comments, Ralph in the comments. There's a player by the name of Derek Meadows. We did not land, and it's not because Derek Meadows didn't want to come to Michigan, but the reality was his asking price was beyond the slot or the price range Michigan was willing to spend for such a player. So he was, I believe he signed with Alabama. So it's interesting to see how teams navigate this moving forward. Michigan has taken, in my opinion, a very proactive approach when they were very reactive for the longest time. But you could see the way they're building the class. I'm excited to see how this portal moves forward, because the rumors are that Michigan's be very aggressive this portal season. We'll see how they do there.
Is there anybody down the list, some kind of diamond in the rough that you like?
Yeah, there's a lot. All right, so let's start with Jacob Washington. So you scroll up a little bit there, Mark. Jacob Washington, wide receiver out of Louisiana. This kid really shined this year. His senior year, he moved up in the rankings. Some sites have him ranked in the top 200. This kid is your X wide receiver, your stretch the field type player. Fantastic hands for a high school player, Mark. This kid, in my opinion, is going to take probably about 2 years to get in the weight room, get his size up. Because, as you can see, he's only 180, about 2 years in strength and conditioning. I think you'll see him make some plays on the field. Very excited about him. Another player who's also on the screen, and anyone who's watched the Michigan channel knows this, Chase Taylor. Extremely underrated player. He just got bumped to 89 by 247. In my opinion, he is a 4-star. I've been high on him ever since he committed. I believe he committed in either late July or August. He's an excellent player. I do think we will see his name on the field on Saturdays, making plays again, about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, a little bit of development for him, but heck of a player. Seems to have a nose for the ball, very aggressive, high football IQ, very physical, sideline to sideline linebacker. Extremely excited for Chase Taylor. And then the late riser, Mark, if you want to scroll down just a little bit to Travis Moten. He's the one we signed him on signing day. A little bit, he's the last one. Yeah, right there. He had 20 sacks his senior year, Mark. So this is what you would call a late riser in the class. And there's a lot of optimism for him. He's going to be playing the 3-tech for a 3-tech potentially, because as you can see, he's 6'5". He has the frame. He may develop into a 0-tech depending how much weight he puts on and where it goes. But this kid had what some scouts in the recruiting industry say, one of the best senior seasons of all defensive linemen in the Midwest. So he is out of Kentucky. So the Midwest region, even though it's, that's how the scouting services work. So excited to see his development in Michigan. This could be one of those potential Kenneth Grant-like finds. Just like Kenneth Grant was one of those senior riser, borderline 3-star or borderline 4-star players. This could be another one. And a lot of people are pretty excited about this one.
All right, 7-5 season.
Yep.
Not good enough for Michigan. However, you finish off the way you did, and there's a bowl game to be played. But in terms of the regular season, so yeah, that game in terms of mattering only mattered to Ohio State in terms of logistics. But we know that game matters way beyond what you can calculate in the standings. So how big was that for Michigan?
Oh, man. As crazy as it sounds, it was a program-defining win. It was for Sharon Moore to because as we all know, anyone who's watched Michigan this year, our expectations exceeded the reality of the result, right? So there was a lot of people, myself included, who was questioning Sharon Moore as a leader, as a coach. And we saw towards the end of the year, players actually starting to develop, getting better. We saw in the Northwestern game, when Sharon Moore finally started taking over play calling duties, the offense starting to play better, and then to put it all together, and then to land a Bryce Underwood. So, to give a little backstory here, Mark, and we talked about this when we did the Ohio State show. If there was a moment in time for Michigan to play Ohio State, it was that moment, because there was so much momentum for that team and for that program. Landon Bryce Underwood playing as well as they did against Northwestern, the offense looking good. The most points we scored all year, the week prior to the Ohio State game. Sharon Moore taking over play calling duties, players getting confidence. We went in there, we got that win. And then I think for the university and the donors and, just the fan base as a whole, the confidence was restored in Sharon. We feel confident he is the leader we need. We just got to get the right coaching staff and upgrade that talent, because as you know, the quarterback position just was not good enough. Wide receiver position just not good enough. There's a few other areas that need to be fixed up. It was also to actually take it even a bit further, Mark, it silenced the critics over the 3 years prior with the things that went on beyond the field, right? So it's a big deal. It was a big deal for that too. It was not only a victory in the standings, but it was a victory. I think just in terms of impact that cannot be quantified.
So not to tear down Sharon Moore at all or question the outcome of that game. This is the point I'm getting at, is that a lot of times throughout sports, the difference between success and failure, it teeters very close to the center, and then something causes it. And that game could well be his launching pad to great success at Michigan. Now, in terms of judging that particular game, obviously Michigan maybe played its best game of the season. Ohio State, people consider that to be the worst game of the season. So it just so happened it came together. Yeah. And obviously the psychology of what's happened the last 4 years favored Michigan being tougher mentally and then Ohio State's coaching staff putting together a game plan that mystifies everyone, put all that together. And then you get 2 missed field goals from Ohio State. So we'll never know if he makes 2 field goals.
Yeah.
We don't know. Maybe Michigan still wins because maybe they put together a drive and score a touchdown and win 17-16. Who knows? I'm not saying that they would have won for sure, but obviously based on the way the game played, Ohio State probably would have won again. But they missed 2 field goals, and that's part of the game. But just to point out how tenuous when there's a young coach, and you can go throughout history of coaching legends or guys that have emerged and see where things were very close, and it wasn't some kind of slam dunk like, oh, you're definitely the guy because you're just killing it right now. No, there was some kind of, whether you want to call it a lucky break or just a good decision that made it happen, or able to rally the troops for one key game that pushed them over the top, that got the program back moving in the right direction.
Right. I mean, the reality is, and I think what you're getting at is the degrees of separation. It could be as simple as just a degree, right? What is the difference between hot and boiling? It's 1 degree. 211 to 212 is 1 degree, boiling point, right? That could literally be the difference between success and failure. It's why it's a game of inches. It quite honestly could be, Mark. It's to be determined, right? The book has not been fully written, but it could be the moment that really ascended Sharon Moore as the coach for the long term at Michigan, because there was people, myself included, where that seat was getting a little warm, Mark. It was just not acceptable this year. The coaching staff was inept. The way that the players were being rotated, some of the players who were starting over others, It was very questionable. And not only that, at least on our show, we were saying, why isn't Mullins playing more? Why isn't Crippen playing? Why is Judice? Why is this X player playing? Why isn't the other? And then eventually, Mark, they did make these adjustments that we were calling for. The fan base could see it was the point, but the coaching staff could not. So it was very frustrating. But as the season progressed, I mean, the team started looking better, started playing better. And let's be honest also, there's a few things here. One, we played good against Oregon. We could have beat Illinois. We could have beat Washington. These are games we could have beat. We did not have the quarterback to do it. And then on top of that, the number one thing, or not number one, one of the more critical things I think, Mark, is the culture through all of it. And it's very easy to lose a culture when your quarterback is not playing well. You're going through 3 of them. There seems to be no light at the end of the tunnel. But it maintained. No one ever quit. Now, someone could now if somebody wants to argue, well, did Will Johnson quit? To be determined. I don't know. He went through the turf toe injury, maybe. I don't believe Colson Loveland quit, though. I believe that was a legitimate injury. But everybody else played. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart. These are all potential first-round draft picks, right? Other guys who are projected to be drafted highly also played. So the culture never, and then not only that, Mark, to show up on that game on Saturday in Columbus and come to play when all the odds were against you, and I mean, you're essentially a college football historian. The largest spread in the game's history, and I also know this because Steve Davis brought this point up. The last 2 times the spreads, the last 2 largest spreads in the game's history, Michigan pulled the upset. Well, that now it's the last 3, and it's just it's to the credit of Sharon Moore to maintain the leadership in the program during dark times. So we're encouraged.
Good stuff from TJ. And also John D'Adamo on Tuesdays. TJ taking your calls on Thursday. So that's Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time on the Michigan channel. TJ, appreciate you stopping by, man.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good night, man.
All right. We're going to check out these recruiting rankings one more time. We're going to look at we already looked at about a half hour ago. If you want to check it out, if you're just joining us and you want to scroll back and check out, we have looked at Georgia, Kentucky, Auburn, Arkansas, Texas, Nebraska, and Michigan. And then in addition to that, we have on other channels, we did Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, tons of Ohio State recruiting coverage over on the Ohio State channel. I went live with Tony Gerdeman and Steve Hellwagon today. Then we had our 2 teams going at it yesterday with 2 separate live shows on the Ohio State channel. So check that out. And USC, of course, with Tim Prangley, and Florida State on Wednesday night as well. So please check those out. We did some Oregon recruiting talk with Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On, and then also Marty McLean from Rivals, Marty Leap from Rivals on Penn State. All right, so we're going to check out this transfer portal. And again, we went through the top 300 players in the nation, saw about 6 or 7 that are still undecided. Okay, transfer portal. It is rolling. A lot of leftovers from some big teams that obviously some guys that are disappointed with their playing time. Texas defensive lineman Jared Bledsoe in the portal. He was a top 175 commit when he came out. We've got a Sam Houston standout safety, Isaiah Cash. I will let you know when I know somebody here. Southern Miss quarterback Tate Rodemaker, formerly of Florida State. Didn't do too much for Florida State, but the starting quarterback there at USM, they had a horrendous season. They were a bad football team. But Tate Rodemaker looking for his next stop. I saw a quarterback the other day. I'm trying to think who that was that is going on their 4th team. USC wide receiver Kyron Hudson. If you remember the opener against LSU, it was one of the best catches you're going to see all your lifetime, basically. Kyron Hudson, really good player. He intends to enter the transfer portal according to the Peristyle. We've got a pretty accomplished wide receiver here from Pitt, Dejon Reynolds. He's a decent player, 55 catches, 744 through the air, and 3 touchdowns in the portal. Charlotte's got a starting linebacker in Cam Burden. And the number of players and the type of player that now enters the portal is all over the map. But the trend that I saw for the first couple years were basically 2 types of players. Number one, it was a top recruit, really highly rated, top 300 kind of guy that had maybe went through their freshman season and then were headed toward their sophomore season. And by the time they got through spring practice of their sophomore season and were like, okay, I didn't play as a freshman. It's not looking good. I don't like where I am on the depth chart. My sophomore season, gone. Seen those kind of guys. Then you've seen the Jared Fisk, Josiah Stewart types that may have been lowly regarded coming out of high school. Then they either were miscalculated, misscouted, or they just blew up, got better, and they dominated at the group of 5 level for 1 or 2 or 3 years. And then bam, they got the promotion, got a big program to notice them because they were just all conference type players at the group of 5 level. And those are the 2 types that we saw a large majority of these guys the first couple years. Ball State wide receiver Justin Bowick is in the portal. He's caught 63 passes in his career. Here's a guy that I've seen play quite a bit. Ashton Daniels at Stanford. Scatter shot arm, but he's got talent. He can run. Threw for almost 4,000 yards and 21 touchdowns at Stanford. And we know that Stanford has been largely overmatched on the football field. So Ashton Daniels probably looking for better players to play with. Kentucky starting tight end Jordan Dingle. He's caught 43 passes in his career and 21 starts. Purdue wide receiver Jerron Tibbs. He's gone. 25 catches, 302 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Purdue was just a dumpster fire. And of course, they fired Ryan Walters. Here we've got New Mexico redshirt wide receiver Luke Wysong. He's gone. He had 69 catches for Wyoming, or for New Mexico, and 69 catches for 840. So he can play. Oh, Nick Anderson, really good player. Nick Anderson is a deep threat. He's one of the many Oklahoma wide receivers who could not stay on the field, as it says there, missed most of the season due to an injury, as did the top 5 Oklahoma wide receivers, but he caught 10 touchdowns the season before, an Oklahoma freshman record. Former top 100 prospect DJ Warner leaving Kansas. Florida tight end Arliss Boardingham gone. He's caught 44 passes, 6 touchdowns. So a lot of players who are not necessarily stars, but they've played a lot and produced, that are out there. Here's a Wake Forest wide receiver, Horatio Fields. Seen him play. He caught 39 passes and 4 touchdowns this last year. And finished off his Wake career with a touchdown catch against Duke, 6 catches, 84 yards. Got a Purdue freshman quarterback, Marcus Davila. I don't know anything about him, but he was the 20th rated quarterback in the 2024 class. I just remember that name. Arkansas starting offensive guard, Patrick Kutas, former 4-star, ranked as one of the top 10 interior offensive lineman recruits in the 22 recruiting class, and a starting player at Arkansas. He'll be coveted. Chattanooga wide receiver Sam Phillips, 153 catches in his career. Got Jackie Franchuli, a friend of the show there, reporting Virginia offensive lineman Charlie Patterson entering the portal. Got another Charlotte player, their transfer corner nickel player Elijah Culp, who's looking at Colorado State and Miami of Ohio. Sam Houston linebacker Trey Fields, 72 tackles. Richmond offensive lineman Keith Gobea, 20 career starts. Central Michigan quarterback Joey Labus. Joey Labus got his start at Iowa. 7 touchdowns passing and over 1,000 yards. So he was a part-time starter. Georgetown defensive lineman Cooper Blomstrom. Princeton offensive lineman transfer Will Reed picked up an offer from Virginia. Anybody else of note? Northwestern starting cornerback, Theron Johnson. Remember seeing him play this year. 53 tackles, 2 picks. All right. Those seem to be the highlights in the transfer portal. We've got a championship game tomorrow night, of course, with UNLV taking on Boise State. That should be an interesting one. My picks are coming out here very soon on Patreon. You can get those on Patreon and also as a premium member right here on YouTube at the Voice of College Football. And you get my picks after a lousy season. I've got to admit, a lousy season picking the games this year. I've been hot for 2 weeks. So jump on the bandwagon here for bowl season, which I usually nail the bowl games. However, that's getting tougher and tougher to do, is predict these bowl games for sure. Big day on Sunday as well. So let's set you up. We've got championship game out of the Mountain West on Friday night, which in the past has not been a huge deal unless you love watching conference championship games. But now it's winner goes to the playoffs, loser out. Boise, 4.5-point favorite, taking on UNLV. Boise won the game at UNLV earlier this season, 29-24. And then we've got the 4 championship games on Saturday, in addition to the MAC, Conference USA. Usually the MAC plays on Friday night as well. We should check out the schedule here. Let's do that. The schedule looks like this for this weekend. So we'll get you set up for what we're planning. So we've got 3 championship games on Friday. We got the Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State matchup there. Where's the other championship games? Okay. Then we've got the aforementioned Boise State UNLV game. And then we also have the American Conference plays on Friday night on ABC. That's a good time spot for them. So that's a good move by the American Conference because that has not been the case in the past. Friday night was the Pac-12, which of course no longer exists. Well, it does technically exist, but for this football season, it basically does not. But the American Conference, they've made a nice move. They're going to Friday night where they can play against the other game. If I were them, I would actually have kicked off earlier. But hey, they're going straight up against the Mountain West Conference game that I would think would gain more viewership because it's more important. But that's our Friday night, and we will most likely be here late night after the ball games. That is the plan. Saturday, we've got the Big 12 championship game at high noon Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central. So every year in the Big 12, they make those guys play an 11 a.m. championship game. Iowa State and Arizona State from, I believe, Dallas, where they've been playing the Big 12 championship game as of late. We've got the MAC title game with Miami of Ohio taking on the Bobcats of OU. That starts at noon as well. So I'll be watching those two games at the same time, getting set for the SEC title game for the first time. Not ever. I believe, yes, the SEC championship game started on ABC. Keith Jackson called the first couple SEC championship games, maybe even more than that. I know that it started on ABC, and I am thinking that even Tennessee game with Peyton Manning against Auburn and Rodney Craig at 97 was an ABC game. I don't know when that transitioned to CBS off the top of my head. I think that was about 2001. That's my best guess. 2001 would have been LSU and Tennessee. Or 2003 was also an LSU win en route to the BCS championship game. One of those years was the first CBS game. So it's been on CBS for 20 years plus. And now back to ABC, which is going to be just different for college football fans. Marshall and Louisiana. Marshall's a 9-3 football team, and Louisiana had a 10-2 year. There's the Big Ten championship game, Oregon, Penn State. That is not on Fox this year for the first time. That is a CBS game. So the Big Ten championship game first started 2011. So this would be the 14th Big Ten championship game. And let's see who's won those games. No, I'm not going to go through it. Anyway, I'm going back to the first one, which was Michigan State, Wisconsin. Was the first Big Ten championship game. Really good game, too. Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, the first Big Ten championship game. So Wisconsin won that game. Then Wisconsin won in 2012, and Michigan State in 13, and Ohio State in 14. Michigan State in 15. Penn State in 16. Ohio State in 17. 18, 19, 20. Michigan 21, 22, 23. So now we got Penn State looking for its second Big Ten championship game win. Beat Wisconsin in 2016. Clemson, SMU. For Clemson, they got to win. Number 17 in the country. For SMU, who knows? Do they have to win? I don't know. They just better do it because they could fall from number 8. But if they lose a close game against Clemson, man, if they beat SMU, that is going to be the first good team that they've beaten this year because Clemson does not have much of a resume. Lost to Georgia by 4 touchdowns, lost to Louisville in a game in which they were dominated, lost a close game in the final minute against South Carolina. Those are the 3 losses for Clemson. And again, the best team that they've beaten, Pitt, 7-5. It has not been a great season for Clemson football, but here they are playing for a college football playoff bid and most likely a bye. Most likely. We'll see. That's going to be an interesting call for the committee to make as well. Those other 2 conference bye seeds between the Big 12, the ACC, and the Mountain West. If UNLV wins, they probably will not vault all the way up into a top 4 spot. Can you imagine UNLV being the 4 seed? Probably won't happen, although it could be justified. If you're number 20 and you beat number 10, it could be justified that that's enough to vault you with a better record or with the same record, 11-2, than 15 beating 16 or 16 beating 15, as is the case with Arizona State and Iowa State. But I expect that if Boise State wins, they're going to be in the top 4. If SMU wins, they're going to be in the top 4. The Iowa State, Arizona State winner will not be in the top 4 if both of those other 2 teams win. It's SMU and Boise State in the 3 and 4 spots if they both win. If one of them falters, then the spot should and will go to the Arizona State, Iowa State winner. Yeah. Clemson could be the 12 seed. Clemson could be the 4 seed if the committee justifies launching them that far ahead based on beating number 8 in the country. That's a flimsy resume to be the number 4 seed in the college football playoff. But that's what it would be. Mike says all the forecasts he is seeing has Arizona State at 12. So whether that's Arizona State or Iowa State, I don't know why they would just say Arizona State. It would be the same for Iowa State. It's a 1.5 point spread. So whoever wins that game. But if Clemson wins, how in the world can they justify, if you're the number 15 team in the country and you're playing the number 16 team in the country, and really even laying it out that simply is not accurate because it goes back to resume. And both Iowa State and Arizona State would have better resumes than Clemson. They just flat out would. They'd be 11-2. They'd have a better record. And just, again, that would be Clemson's best win by far. Iowa State has defeated 3 8-4 teams: Iowa, Kansas State, and Baylor. And Arizona State has defeated a 10-2 team in BYU and an 8-4 team in Kansas State. So it's a close enough call that the committee can do whatever they want and make an excuse, and they can explain it. Not even make an excuse, they can just explain it, but they can decide whatever they want. They can decide that Arizona State or Iowa State have made it to that 4th position, and they can justify that. They can also justify Clemson for sure. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And one more time to look at what are close to the final rankings. In the recruiting rankings, there will be a few more to be signed. But again, it's only about 5 or 6 players in the 2025 class. So this is what it looks like right now. Texas, number 1. Bama 2, Georgia 3, Oregon with a big flip over Ohio State from 4 to 5. Auburn 6, Michigan 7, LSU 8, Texas A&M 9, Tennessee 10. Has anything really changed in college football? Has anything really changed in regards to the rich getting richer? Not really. Auburn had a better class than usual, but Auburn has had top 10 classes usually. So this is nothing that drastic. Who's going to be the first school that's going to jump up that's any kind of surprise? I don't know that there's going to be one. Florida 11, Notre Dame, USC, Miami, and Ole Miss. Miami had a disappointing National Signing Day. They were ranked close to number 5 in the country before they got lapped. Oklahoma, Penn State, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, had a great National Signing Day. So they did better than they have in years. Missouri at 19, South Carolina at 20. We talked Nebraska, Washington, TCU, Wisconsin. That's a good day for Sonny Dykes at TCU. You bring in the 23rd ranked recruiting class into the Big 12. Are they number one in the Big 12? They are number one in the Big 12, the 23rd class in the country. Luke Fickell with a decent year at 24, Florida State. That is not a great class, but based on what Florida State went through this year and based on where their recruiting ranking stood a month ago, that's a remarkable finish. Clemson with a bad class, although that's only 15 commits. Maryland, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Rutgers. That's a nice class for Rutgers, although 27 commits. So their per average ranking isn't that great. SMU, Arkansas, Duke. Baylor at 34, Kansas State 35. Syracuse, Fran Brown. That's a good class for Syracuse. Dion at 37 with Colorado, Utah, Iowa at 39. Virginia Tech, West Virginia, NC State, Illinois. Nothing really stands out there. Of course, West Virginia is doing that without a head coach. Texas Tech, Indiana, and Kurt Signetti. Stanford, Arizona State. Look at that. Arizona State, you would think, coming off this year, will do better. Kenny Dillingham's a go-getter, doing a great job. Arizona State high school football has gotten much better. Pitt, Houston, UCLA. UCLA should do better than that. That's a poor showing by Deshaun Foster right there. UCLA usually in the top 25. Usually in the back end of the top 25, but somewhere in that range. Disputed National Champions. Folks, you will enjoy this book. I'm telling you. If you love college football, it's a trip through memory lane, but it's much more than that. We dissect every season of the 1990s. And again, we put a spin on it to look at what were the storylines, the major games, the big moments, the rankings, who got screwed, who got left out. Was there a change in the game? Was there a dynasty launched? What happened that particular season? Then we fast forwarded into the BCS era, the 14 college football playoff era, the 12-team playoff era, and the proposed 14-team playoff era. So it's fun to read about what might have been. Pick a year. 1996. 12-team playoff. 12-team playoff in 1996. North Carolina 12, Northwestern 11. Northwestern in the 12-team playoff in 1996. Tennessee 10, Colorado 9, Penn State 8, Virginia Tech 7 as the Big East champ. Nebraska 6 as the Big 8 champ. BYU number 5 as the SWAC champion. Ohio State number 4, Big 10 champ. Florida 3 is the SEC champion. Florida State number 2 is the ACC champion. And Arizona State number 1, the Pac-10 champion. Now, you think we're squabbling over Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss. Does SMU stay in there? What about Miami? All of those teams, and who should make the top 12? In 1996, Penn State 10-2, Colorado 9-2, Tennessee 9-2, Northwestern 9-2, North Carolina 9-2, Washington 9-2, Kansas State 9-2, LSU 9-2. That's 8 teams for 5 spots. Let's pick another year. 1990, 92. Your top 12. Your 12-team playoff in 1992. Listen to this. I couldn't figure out who would have been the 12 seed because Hawaii won the WAC at 10-2. No, but BYU was higher ranked out of the WAC. That was weird. So anyway, number 12, either Hawaii or BYU. 11, Colorado. 10, Georgia. 9, Syracuse in the college football playoff. Number 8, Notre Dame. 7, Miami. Miami was undefeated, but they would have been the 7th seed because they didn't play in a conference. They were an independent. Number 6, Nebraska out of the Big 8. Number 5, Pac-10 champion Washington. Number 4, Michigan, Big 10 champion. Number 3, Texas A&M, the Southwest Conference champion. Number 2, Florida of the ACC. And number 1 in the nation, Alabama in 1992. So you had a log jam here in 1992. Syracuse, Georgia, 9-2. NC State, 9-2-1. Stanford, 8-3. Ohio State, 8-2-1. Boston College, 8-2-1. Tennessee, 8-3. Washington State, 8-3. North Carolina, 8-3. And Ole Miss, 8-3. What about that mess? So anyway, we had fun writing it. And again, we hope that you will, which reminds me, oh boy, I've had all sorts of people ask me for signed copies. I got to get back to figure out a best way to do that. But thank you for considering Disputed National Champions. It's a great Christmas present for $9.99. Do you have any of those people that you have in your life that you're like, I should probably get them a Christmas present, but I don't really want to spend that much money on that person? $9.99, Disputed National Champions. You can look it up on Amazon, or you can just grab the link down in the description section. Folks, we got an Ole Miss channel, and we do a Wednesday show at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, we've got an Ole Miss channel, so please check it out. Again, we anticipate being here late night on Friday after the championship games, and then all day on Saturday, of course, with the championship games, and then watch party with me on a Sunday as we take in the playoff rankings and the final playoff rankings and all the mayhem that will ensue. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you late night on Friday.